Question for our staff for permitted event, are the guests going to pay for it too?
Anything sanctioned by the city, any room rentals or special events, no one will ever have to pay.
Okay, all right. And let's say that we issue a permit for the event on Saturday at the Woodland Street Park, and those people who can park at the police parking without paying.
The parking structure would be set up with a sign that says event parking. We can even customize it and say, the name of the event, park, location. They'll be able to park for free. If they start taking, they get here early and there's any confusion ever, a false citation will be levied.
Okay,
That has not happened in all the years that we've been operating.
a lot of people are conscious to not paying. We didn't enforce it. If we implement this again, I would like to have staff make sure that we have enough signs around Elizabeth sometimes so that people can see that we are now enforce
There was notices issued to all of our neighbors for the traffic commission meeting, so they were given an opportunity to come to the traffic commission and comment. And our police chief has been working with the city manager's office on how we roll this out so that there's going to be information provided to everybody, temporary or courtesy notices early on before we actually start getting people with real dollars.
All right, thank you very much. And I know that we have a motion and a second on the floor. I'd like to call for a question. Okay, there is a second motion. Go ahead.
Okay, so basically, I don't mind enforcing it, which we haven't enforced since COVID. We need to enforce the policy that we already have and the price that we already set in stone. So that's what number one we need to do. Not because of today increasing the price, so then therefore we can allow to enforce. No, you guys already have a policy.
I don't want to go over it again. Let's go ahead.
Is to enforce the original policy that we already have.
No, stop.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Listen. Don't hurry up. No, listen.
Hearing none.
No, stop.
Substitute motion failed. So go back to the original motion and roll call vote, please.
Motion made by Councilmember Nguyen, seconded by Vice Mayor Ho to approve the update of the Civic Center paid parking system policy and adopt a resolution entitled a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Westminster, California, updating parking rates and hours of operation, and adopt a resolution entitled a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of the City of Westminster, California, updating fines for pay station violations. I'll go ahead and call roll. Councilwoman Van West.
Before I vote, I want to make this quick statement that since we have the 1% tax, the 0.5% tax, we cannot gouge the people, and we have not enforced the old policy of the pricing. First and foremost, we need to enforce the old policy and the price that we have set already. Don't increase the price to just gouge the people. We already gouged them with the 1%.
We hear that already, so.
My vote is no because of that. Van West, no.
Councilmember Monzo.
Yes.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ho.
Van West, you better listen better instead of
Please,
texting. Yes.
I think that's why we have the code of ethic. You just wrote that. Let me read the code of ethic if you need to.
I have a motion carried 4-1.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, Mayor, if I can add to that, and for one with Councilwoman Van West voting no. I know there was some discussion, and I just tried to listen on this as far as enforcement goes, but with COVID, the city was being mindful of just the hardships that people had, which is why we didn't enforce. Obviously, the other side of that too is, we've talked about staff and the amount of staff. We've heard complaints about street sweeping tickets not being provided because we lack the citation staff. it's the same reason why we are not being able to consistently cite at the parking lot as well. So it's not for the lack of, for us not wanting to enforce our own policies, but it is, it's making a choice. Do we do street sweeping, or do we, cite at our civic center lot? And then of course, just the hiring process. So I just want to make that clear before it becomes, a misconstrued statement that staff does not want to enforce. So thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Next item is 7.2, adoption of the updated engineering and traffic survey for 17 speed segments, and introduction of an ordinance amending the Westminster Municipal Code concerning speed limits within the city. Start.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna go a little bit faster on this, because then we have a long night, and slow me down if you need to, but this item was also brought to the Traffic Commission at the same meeting as the previous item, and was approved. Now it's being brought to you for a formal approval. Engineering and traffic survey is just a fancy way of setting speed limits. Engineering and traffic survey is part of California law. It protects the residents from unfairly setting speed limits to trigger additional citations. So California law is very specific as to how speed limits have to be set statewide. And we follow the rule to a T. You're fortunate in this city to have 2 registered traffic engineers. I'm one of them. The other one is sitting here to my left, Bill Pham. He's also the traffic division. And we have Bob Trainer who also helped process this. And of course, you met Veronica earlier, who all together move a lot of these transportation initiatives forward. So I just want to make it very, very clear that this is not an arbitrary setting of speed limits. It's not my recommendation. We are following a statistical approach that is set forth by the state of California and is done statewide. The reason that we set speed limits this manner is to allow our police officers, and actually our sergeant spends a lot of time on the motorcycle. One of the reasons that we set speed limits in this manner is to allow them to enforce the law utilizing a speed radar gun. And I'm going to get into the slides, but I just need to say that up front. Setting these speed limits in this manner allow the police department to enforce speeds and keep our police officers safe. There are other ways to enforce speed. You see that on rural roads. You see that in other areas where it's not as dense and as hectic, with driveways and side streets. There are other ways that police officers nationwide can enforce speeds, but in a built-out, big city environment like we are here in the city of Westminster, having an engineering speed survey allows them to utilize a radar gun, a calibrated gun, and it is for the safety of our police officers. So it's all tied to that. I just wanted to put that out there first before we get lost in some of the engineering stuff and lose people on some time. So, we have 17 street segments that we are bringing forward as part of this item tonight. We hired a company, AGA Engineering. They were paid for out of the 405 Improvement Fund. And the question is, why are we bringing these 17 street segments to you tonight, and why are we bringing the whole citywide speed system? The reason that we're bringing the entire city is because we did that, and that was approved by council action. But these 17 street segments were modified significantly with either a project, such as our Garden Grove bikeway project, or the characteristics were also changed due to the 405 improvement project. And the state law states that every time you modify a street segment, whether you put in a median, whether you widen the number of lanes or reduce the number of lanes, whether you introduce bike lanes, anytime you do anything different to the street segment, you have to bring it to the council, you have to do a study to be able to make it efficient and then be able to enforce it. So one of the projects that we just recently built was this one here at Garden Grove Boulevard. So every street segment along this new project requires an analysis. And we did that. We touched Edwards, so we have to do Edwards, and then again, of course, we have the largest infrastructure project in the state of California, which is the 405 freeway. All the bridges were widened, all the connection points were widened, the ramps were realigned. So the old speed limits on these segments near the freeway, over the freeway, or not enforceable unless we do this analysis, and that's what we're bringing to you today. Touched a little bit about this. It is an engineering analysis. We're usually good about we are always good about bringing this to you for renewal every 14 years. I've had the pleasure of doing this at least once here in the city. And these are the segments that we talked about. All these streets here, so I won't list them. But all of the information that goes into the engineering analysis, it starts with traffic collisions. So we look at a roadway and we work with the police department to identify how many traffic collisions exist on every single roadway. I want to just talk about something, just a very holistic thought process, right? When you build a roadway, you are guaranteeing that there's going to be people driving it. You're also guaranteeing that there's going to be accidents. And unfortunately, there is going to be fatalities on the road. So everything comes at a price, right? When you build a roadway, you have more accidents, and that's the reason that we look at it, right? We look at a roadway, and depending on the number of lanes on a roadway, you anticipate that there's going to be so many accidents. For every million trips, there's going to be so many accidents. So we go into a very intricate analysis to see if the actual accidents on a segment are higher than the statistical estimate expected number of averages, right? So we look at that as one of the things that we focus on. We use a calibrated radar gun. Our police department actually loaned us a good radar gun. We go out there in a vehicle that does not look like a police vehicle, not during the rush hour when people are driving faster than they usually do. We do it under normal conditions. We literally take samples of people that are driving on that segment, take 100 samples, and we calculate the 85th percentile. So I'll go into it a little bit. Every time you build a roadway, you can guarantee that 15% of the people on that roadway are going faster than they should. So we focus a lot on what the 85th percentile is. So that is considered the safe speed of the roadway. So every single roadway is going to have people drive slow, people that drive fast. For all of us that remember statistics, the average close to 50, the 85th percentile at the 85% mark, right? So we look at that. We created a little sample because this has come up before with traffic commissioners. You look at Bolsa Avenue here on the top. That's the way it looked before construction. The speed limit was 45 miles per hour. We had 5 lanes. There were no bike lanes, and it was more of a gradual incline over the freeway. After the project, we now have 7 lanes. This is a good thing. We fought for wider maximum number of lanes. It's safer because the roads used to taper in, and we used to drop lanes as we went over the freeway. And unfortunately, though, the design standards require that the bridges be built taller and longer than they have in the past. So there are certain characteristics that change. When we look at this same example, after we did the 85th percentile calculation, the 85th percentile calculation is at 38 miles per hour. The law requires that we round that up to 40. As far as the collisions, we looked at collisions, we looked at the roadway characteristics, and we looked at the characteristics of the roadway, and this is the engineering determination. The engineering determination has to be done by a state licensed traffic engineer, is to make an assessment as to what the speed limit should be, right? So in this particular case, this example, which is one of the ones you're voting on tonight, our final speed recommendation is 40 miles per hour. For another roadway, examples, I'm not gonna go through all of them. Now is a summary, and this is usually what the council's concerned with, is are we increasing speed limits? Because the public rarely likes that. Sometimes we do bring you increases, and we do so because that's what the law requires us to do. After we did this analysis, we found that we are bringing to you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decreases. All of these would get approved tonight if the council approves. The recommended action is to adopt the engineering and traffic survey for all 17 segments. I just showed you which ones are actually being decreased. And then introduce an ordinance entitled the Mayor and City Council of the City of Westminster, California, General Section 1064010, Title 20 Vehicles and Traffic of the Westminster Municipal Code concerning speed limits within the city. Once this gets adopted, we pass that on to the police department, and they immediately start to enforce the new laws. If we don't enforce speeding in our community, we are introducing additional fatalities and accidents. So I can never be a motor cop. We have motor cops that are really good at what they do, and by giving citations to people, they're actually saving lives. So now they have all the tools in place to do so. That concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you very much. I understand that this item is the same as 7.1. Staff already brought it to the traffic commissioner, and I was voted 4-0. Correct?
That's correct.
All right, so I trust that the traffic commissioners vetted into this study. At this time, I would like to open up for council comment. Let me start with Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. Can you remind me the last time in 2019 or no, in 2020, why we increased the speed of Bishop Boulevard?
Yes, we were nearing our expiration